Ambrose, and I rather think you and he will get on uncommonly well together." The humorous twinkle in Allan's eye, the sly significance in Allan's voice would have betrayed his secret to a prosperous man. Midwinter was as far from suspecting it as the carpenters who were at work above them on the deck of the yacht. "Is there no steward now on the estate?" he asked, his face showing plainly that he was far from feeling satisfied with Allan's answer. "Is the business neglected all this time?" "Nothing of the sort," returned Allan. "The business is going with a wet sheet and a flowing sea and a wind that follows free. I'm not joking. I'm only metaphorical. A regular accountant has poked his nose into the books, and a steady-going lawyer's clerk attends at the office once a week. That doesn't look like neglect, does it? Leave the new steward alone for the present, and just tell me which of those two tenants you would take if you were in my place." Midwinter opened their proposals and read them attentively. The first proposal was from no less a person than the solicitor at Thorpe Ambrose, who had first informed Allan at Paris of the large fortune that had fallen into his hands. This gentleman wrote personally to say that he had long admired the cottage, which was charmingly situated within the limits of the Thorpe Ambrose grounds. He was a bachelor, of studious habits, desirous of retiring to a country seclusion after the wear and tear of his business hours, and he ventured to say that Mr. Armadale, in accepting him as a tenant, might count on securing an unobtrusive neighbor, and on putting the cottage into responsible and careful hands. The second proposal came through the house agent, and proceeded from a total stranger. The tenant who offered for the cottage in this case was a retired officer in the army, one Major Milroy. His family merely consisted of an invalid wife and an only child, a young lady. His references were unexceptional, and he too was especially anxious to secure the cottage, as the perfect quiet of the situation was exactly what was required by Mrs. Milroy in her feeble state of health. "Well, which profession shall I favor?" asked Allan. "The army or the law?" "There seems to me to be no doubt about it," said Midwinter. "The lawyer has been already in correspondence with you, and the lawyer's claim is, therefore, the claim to be preferred." "I knew you would say that. In all the thousands of times I have asked other people for advice, I never yet got the advice I wanted. Here's the business of letting the cottage as an instance. I'm all on the other side myself. I want to have the major." "Why?" Young Armadale laid his forefinger on that part of the agent's letter which enumerated Major Milroy's family, and which contained the three words, "a young lady." "A bachelor of studious habits walking about my grounds," said Allan, "is not an interesting object. A young lady is. I have not the least doubt Miss Milroy is a charming girl. Ozias Midwinter of the serious countenance, think of her pretty muslin dress flitting about amongst your trees, and committing trespasses on your property. Think of her adorable feet trotting into your fruit garden, and her delicious fresh lips kissing your ripe peaches. Think of her dimpled hands among your early violets, and her little cream-colored nose buried in your blush roses. What does the studious bachelor offer me in exchange for the loss of all this? He offers me a rheumatic brown object in gaiters and a wig. No, no! Justice is good, my dear friend, but believe me, Miss Milroy is better." "Can you be serious about any mortal thing, Allan?" "I'll try to be, if you like. I know I ought to take the lawyer, but what can I do if the major's daughter keeps running in my head?" Midwinter turned resolutely to the just and sensible view of the matter, and pressed it on his friend's attention with all the persuasion of which he was master. After listening with exemplary patience until he had done, Allan swept a supplementary accumulation of litter off the cabin table, and produced from his waistcoat pocket a half-crown coin. "I've got an entirely new idea," he said. "Let's leave it to chance." The absurdity of the proposal, as coming from a landlord, was irresistible. Midwinter's gravity deserted him. "I'll spin," continued Allan, "and you shall call. We must give precedence to the army, of course, so we'll say heads the major, tails the lawyer. One spin to decide. Now then, look out!" He spun the half crown on the cabin table, "Tails!" cried Midwinter, humoring what he believed to be one of Allan's boyish jokes. The coin fell on the table with the head uppermost. "You don't mean to say you are really in earnest?" said Midwinter, as the other opened his writing case and dipped his pen in the ink. "Oh, but I am, though," replied Allan. "Chance is on my side and Miss Milroy's, and you're outvoted 2-1. It's no use arguing. The major has fallen uppermost, and the major shall have the cottage. I won't leave it to the lawyers; they'll only be worrying me with more letters. I'll write myself." He wrote his answers to the two proposals literally in 2 minutes. One to the house agent: "Dear Sir, I accept Major Milroy's offer. Let him come in when he pleases. Yours truly, Allan Armadale." And one to the lawyer: "Dear Sir, I regret that circumstances prevent me from accepting your proposal. Yours truly, etc." "People make a fuss about letter writing," Allan remarked when he had done. "I find it easy enough." He wrote the addresses on his 2 notes, and stamped them for the post, whistling gayly. While he had been writing he had not noticed how his friend was occupied. When he had done, it struck him that a sudden silence had fallen on the cabin, and, looking up, he observed that Midwinter's whole attention was strangely concentrated on the half-crown as it lay head uppermost on the table. Allan suspended his whistling in astonishment. "What on earth are you doing?" he asked. "I was only wondering," replied Midwinter. "What about?" persisted Allan. "I was wondering," said the other, handing him back the half-crown, "whether there is such a thing as chance." Half an hour later the 2 notes were posted, and Allan, whose close superintendence of the repairs of the yacht had hitherto allowed him but little leisure time on shore, had proposed to while away the idle hours by taking a walk in Castletown. Even Midwinter's nervous anxiety to deserve Mr. Brock's confidence in him could detect nothing objectionable in this harmless proposal, and the young men set forth together to see what they could make of the metropolis of the Isle of Man. It is doubtful if there is a place on the habitable globe which, regarded as a sight-seeing investment offering itself to the spare attention of strangers, yields so small a percentage of interest in return as Castletown. Beginning with the waterside, there was an inner harbor to see, with a drawbridge to let vessels through; an outer harbor ending in a dwarf lighthouse; a view of a flat coast to the right, and a view of a flat coast to the left. In the central solitudes of the city there was a squat gray building called the Castle; also a memorial pillar dedicated to one Governor Smelt, with a flat top for a statue, and no statue standing on it; also a barrack holding the half company of soldiers allotted to the island, and exhibiting one spirit-broken sentry at its lonely door. The prevalent color of the town was faint gray. The few shops open were parted at frequent intervals by other shops closed and deserted in despair. The weary lounging of boatmen on shore was trebly weary here. The youth of the district smoked together in speechless depression under the lee of a dead wall. The ragged children said mechanically, "Give us a penny," and before the charitable hand could search the merciful pocket, lapsed away again in misanthropic doubt of the human nature they addressed. The silence of the grave overflowed the churchyard, and filled this miserable town. But one edifice, prosperous to look at, rose consolatory in the desolation of those dreadful streets. Frequented by the students of the neighboring College of King William, this building was naturally dedicated to the uses of a pastry-cook's shop. Here, at least, viewed through the friendly medium of the window, there was something going on for a stranger to see; for here, on high stools, the pupils of the college sat, with swinging legs and slowly moving jaws, and, hushed in the horrid stillness of Castletown, gorged their pastry gravely in an atmosphere of awful silence. "Hang me if I can look any longer at the boys and the tarts," said Allan, dragging his friend away from the pastry-cook's shop. "Let's try if we can't find something else to amuse us in the next street." The first amusing object which the next street presented was a carver and gilder's shop, expiring feebly in the last stage of commercial decay. The counter inside displayed nothing to view but the recumbent head of a